today. Elise is going to introduce you to Sustainable Food Cities and give you a bit of background about the work that they're doing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maria. Hi, everyone. This is Alize. I hope you can all hear me. Let me know if you can't. So as Maria mentioned, I'm from Sustainable Food Cities. I'm project officer, and I'll just be giving you a brief overview of Sustainable Food Cities so that those who aren't familiar with us can hopefully have a sense of what we're about. But if you do want to find out more, please visit our website, because there's a lot more info there than what I'm going to be able to give you in 10 minutes. And also, please don't hesitate to contact us directly. I'm going to put my email address in the chat box just after the presentation. So please don't hesitate. All right, so what is Sustainable Food Cities? Well, it's a network that's been running since 2013. At the moment, we have 47 member cities all across the UK. And what the network is really about is joining cities together that have adopted a similar approach to putting food at the heart of their city. So this map here is actually interactive on our website, so you can go and visit it, and you can see each page of each city's page, where you'll find their projects and get in touch with the main contact there. So what exactly does it look like? Well, each city of the network has done mainly three things to join. It has set up a cross-sector partnership, so engaging all the stakeholders locally who could have an interest in developing the local food culture. So this can be local authorities and public health, businesses, NGOs, other community organizations, and academics as well. One of the first things that partnerships then do is to elaborate together a joint vision. So what does a sustainable food city look like for them? Each city is different. Each city has their own set of priorities. So this is going to be different for each member. This generally takes the form of a food charter. And again, you can find lots of examples of those on our website. The next step after the charter is actually developing a strategy and an action plan to really put into practice this vision. So to help cities in this process, we've developed a set of 6 key issues, which you'll see appear here. The idea was that with these issues, we hope to cover all of the different dimensions of food that we think should be addressed if we want to work towards a sustainable local food system. Because, as I'm sure you're all aware, food is such a big beast that it's often easy to get really focused on one issue and forget all the rest, whereas we think that it's addressing jointly all of the issues that will really make significant positive change on the ground. So you'll see, you can have a quick read through these 6 issues. What I haven't detailed here is that we've broken down each of these issues into 8 different actions. So these aren't prescriptive, they're just examples of what sort of things cities can do on the ground. So it's just hoping to give them some ideas and of what they can actually do, and to inspire them. So to help this and to illustrate, we've researched into what cities have already been doing, what are the great things that are already happening across the UK. And so we've put together, we've collected a set of over 600 examples of what's happening. So again, if you go on the website, you'll see that for each key issue, here, for example, the second key issue, tackling food poverty, diet-related ill health, and access to affordable, healthy food. One of the actions that we suggest is to promote Healthy Start vouchers, free school meals, and social food provision. And so for this is just an extract, but we've gathered all the examples of what's happening. So here you can see in Carlisle, in Exeter, in Cardiff, what they've been doing. And as well, we've compiled resources that we think could be useful for your projects. So you can see those here. They're either national, from national organizations, or from cities themselves who have done some great research. So all of these amazing pioneering activities that are happening in the cities, we wanted, we thought we need to celebrate this. This is something that we need to recognize, and so that's why we've set up the award structure, and it was really aiming at that, at celebrating the efforts of the cities who are making tangible progress to improve all aspects of the food system locally. So all of these cities have really tackled each of these 6 key issues in different ways. And so you can see these are the first 9 award winners. And if you want to, you can freely access their applications on the website. If you're curious about what sort of things they've been doing, it's a really interesting read. So I would also really encourage you, if you want to keep in touch with what's happening in the network, because this is just a brief overview, but the best way to find out more is to sign up to our newsletter, because that's how we share all of the the great news that cities have shared with us, their new projects, and also any national food related news and funding opportunities that we come across. So we share these monthly, and the sort of resources that I mentioned before. So that was just a quick whistle-stop tour, but as Maria mentioned, this is the last webinar in the series on engaging people through food, and I think you'll agree with me that this idea of engaging people is really fundamental to all of the issues that we've mentioned, all the 6 key issues. I mean, none of those could really be achieved if people don't feel engaged. So I really want to thank all the presenters today, Hannah, Lorraine, Kieran, Claire, for agreeing to take part and to share your expertise on how to engage families. And thanks to Maria and Nora as well for suggesting the idea and for helping us to organize it. So I'll pass on over to you, Maria, and I think that's my time up. Thank you,
Lovely.
Everyone.
Thank you very much, Elise. That's great. Just to recap on what Elise said there, although it's called Sustainable Food Cities, it doesn't just include cities, it also includes boroughs, towns, other areas. It's very much about place-based action and some sort of joined up thinking. And even if you are a much smaller project, it's worth having a look at the website, signing up to the newsletter. There's lots of useful information and ideas around those main themes there as well. Now I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce Nora Maldoon from the Wellcome Trust, who's going to talk to you about the Crunch, which I mentioned is a project that we at Sustain have been working on as well. Thank you very much, Nora.
Hello everyone, my name is Nora, and it's great. Thank you for joining us all today for this webinar, and big thank you to Maria and Elise for the opportunity to participate in this really great webinar series. As Maria mentioned, I work for an organisation called the Wellcome Trust, and the Wellcome Trust is a global health foundation, and our big aim is to improve health for everyone. And we do this by supporting thousands of very passionate and inspirational individuals around the world, who are researchers and practitioners and others. So the Crunch Initiative, it's a national programme, and it's about providing opportunities for people of all ages to explore how our food and drink is connected to our health and also our environment. So I have a number of different programmes, and this is a whistle-stop tour. So I will share my email address for you to contact me directly with any kind of questions you have about the Crunch. Before the summer holidays, we sent a free experiment kit to every single school and further education college in the UK. And these were sent to science coordinators in primary schools and heads of biology in secondary schools. And if any of you work in schools or have children at school, it's always brilliant if you can kind of mention these kits to the teachers, because these kits were a surprise, and sometimes surprises get put in the storeroom. So any help with that is always brilliant. These kits include equipment and also activities that are linked to the science curricula across the UK. And there are a number of supporting online materials as well. And these activities explore, where our food comes from, what's in our food, and some of the issues as well, such as, for example, palm oil is one of the issues that's covered in the primary school programme. And the aim is to inspire young people to do investigations, to be curious about these things. And also we've got a number of plays that have been produced to support these activities, to enable them to think about some of the wider issues around the food system in terms of access, and the fact that, sometimes what we eat in the UK comes from many different parts of the world, and the way that food's produced can have an impact on different communities as well. So all of these resources are free for people to use, and you can also download, even if you're not a teacher, you can download the plays and other activity sheets from the Crunch website. So that's the schools programme. We also have activities for families, and we've been really lucky to work with the Association for Science and Discovery Centres in the UK and 9 different brilliant science and discovery centres, including Eureka, and I'm really happy that Lorraine is here today to share further details on the wonderful engagement work that she and her colleagues do. The Families programme was to support science and discovery centres to do more community outreach, so to actually go to the food festivals and fairs that families go to, and to provide a range of different hands-on activities for them to engage with. So in the pictures there, you can see some of them. Some children and families actually produce their own tortillas. And the story behind this bike was that the fruit and vegetables that people were using to make delicious drinks were actually surplus fruit and vegetables that science centres got from local markets. So the big story there was around the amount of food that's wasted every day in the UK, but to do that in a fun and enjoyable way. So all of these different activities as well, if anyone's interested in engaging with the training handbook that was produced, do let me know and I can share that with you. There is also an online game to support this programme. So far, the events that the Science Centres have run have engaged over 170,000 people across the UK. And we're really grateful to all of the centres for the amazing work that they've done throughout the holidays. There's also a game called Hungry City that you can play on our website, which is linked to this experience for families. We had another programme for adults. This was a smaller scale programme, but interesting, it was called Chew It Over. And interestingly, we worked with some organisations who combined dialogue with drama again. And the drama element of it was different scenarios about past, present and future of food. And that was to simulate discussion, and participants shared their views on these issues during a number of events that have been taking place around the UK. And we're bringing together all the insights and views and supporting multimedia together for you all, and we'll be sharing this on our website in February 2017. At the moment, if you go to the Explore section of the Crunch website, you can listen to some of the sound bites from the Chew It Over programme. And Maria mentioned earlier, an ambassadors programme has been developed alongside all of these other activities. And again, we've been really lucky to work with the Eden Project and Sustain on this programme. So there are over 800 people who've signed up across the UK. And these are all individuals who are really passionate about engaging their communities with food and some of the issues around food. We ran a number of network events and we linked in with the Sustainable Food Cities Network. So these events took place at cities throughout the UK. This programme is currently open to anyone age 16 plus. You can sign up which includes opportunities for you to take part in lots of activities around the UK. But we've got some resources that were developed as part of this programme, which again, we can share with you. And these are to stimulate discussion about how our food, health and planet are connected. One of the most popular ones has been a food timeline, which enables families and others to explore some of the key moments through history. And we felt like this is a positive way for people to explore change through time. Okay. We've got a number of digital resources on our website. I mentioned the sound bites earlier. We've also got some games and infographics, such as the true cost of your breakfast, where you can explore all the different resources that are needed to produce the breakfast that we enjoy every day in the UK. So that's just a very quick introduction to the Crunch. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all of the different organisations that have helped to create the Crunch, and again to Maria and Elise for putting together this excellent series of webinars. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, Nora. That's fantastic. And just to say, while we're talking about the ambassadors, it's not too late if you want to sign up as one of our ambassadors. Because the programme is continuing and it gives you access to a network of other like-minded individuals, and we send out our monthly newsletter. So still an opportunity to sign up there. I'm now pleased to introduce Hannah Lambert, who's producer with a fantastic project called Fun Palaces, who's going to give us some insights into how to engage families and also some top tips. So thank you very much, Hannah, and the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. This is my first ever dalliance with a webinar, so fingers crossed it goes okay. Thank you to Maria and Alize and Nora. Thank you for having me to talk more about Fun Palaces. I thought I would take the opportunity to talk a little bit through what Fun Palaces is, for those who don't know, what's happened so far, and how we work and how that connects to families, to communities, to food and health and the environment, and all the great things that the Crunch and associated partners are doing. So, Fun Palaces, it's a campaign for cultural democracy, no less. It's quite bold. And at its heart, it's about community cohesion. And obviously within communities are families, but it has no kind of specific focus on families, but we welcome everyone and anyone to get involved with Fun Palaces. We have our manifesto, which is on your screen at the moment, which took us a long time to build because Fun Palaces kind of came out of an idea from the 60s, actually. There was a theatre director who many of you may know or have heard of called Joan Littlewood. And sometime in the early 60s, she had an idea with an architect called Cedric Price that they wanted to build a building that was a building for everybody, where anyone from any kind of background, age, any kind of experience could come in and learn and share and meet people and, debate, kind of experience things they may have never kind of had before. The idea was quite radical at the time, even though perhaps it's not so now, but it never got made. The budget was huge, and it kind of fell away. Anyway, Joan would have been 100 in 2014, and about a year before, Stella Duffy, who is the co-director of Fun Palaces, she asked if anybody in the arts community wanted to do something to celebrate Joan's life, her centenary, that wasn't another production of her most famous play, which is Oh, What a Lovely War. Someone else suggested Fun Palaces, and someone else said, well, actually, it doesn't have to be a new building. It could happen anywhere and everywhere, and anybody can make one. And kind of from that, it started a big journey for all of us. We're a fairly small team, like many people probably on the line and presenting. We are a part-time team of about 5. We work 2 days a week, but we've managed to achieve, with the help and collaboration of hundreds, thousands of people, something quite interesting over the last 3 years. So as I said, we're a campaign, an ongoing campaign, and we want to make culture, and we see art, science, technology, craft, anything you like under that kind of broad umbrella of culture. And I would totally include food and health and the environment and the planet within that. Anything that people want to do that gets them together to talk and meet each other. But as an ongoing campaign, we also have a weekend of action. And our weekend of action is over the first weekend of October every year. In 2014 and 15, as you can see, there were 280 Fun Palaces. We're international, and they are made by people. They're not made by us. They're people who have heard about what Fun Palaces is, that it's doing something in your own community, and asking other people in your community to do it with you. The only kind of, I guess, pillars of Fun Palaces, because we're very, very open, are that we ask people to make their Fun Palaces free and local, and to try and do something innovative. So to try to do something new or different with the space that they're in, and maybe transform it in some way. And we believe that somehow there is a difference of doing something by, with, and for your community rather than just for them. And what I mean by that is it's the difference between a venue saying, okay, we'd like to get involved with this weekend and we'd like to put on an event for you and invite you to come. Fun Palaces asks people to say, okay, we have a space, we may be a library, we may be a cafe, we may be an arts organisation, we may be any space you can think of. We would like to ask the people who live nearby and who come to our space, or may not come to our space, what they would like to happen in that space. I have a few jazzy infographics just to kind of show the spread. That was last year, 2015. We had 142 Fun Palaces with 2,000 people, we call them makers, who took charge and signed up on our website and said, yes, I would like to do something that weekend that is for my community. And we had 50,000 people taking part. A lot of them, I'm just looking at my next slide. We have a particularly kind of interesting spread in terms of the places that Fun Palaces happen in. As you can see, they kind of range from perhaps more traditional arts-based spaces, galleries, theatres, to tech spaces, to universities and schools, to sports centres. And I think there's something kind of interesting about the fact that we are open, and we do say yes to people, and we ask other people to say yes. And we think that that's when a bit of magic happens. And we think that that's why our kind of stats in terms of our ethnic background of Fun Palaces makers is pretty close to the national distribution, which we're very proud of. And we've kept that up this year, which is great. I think the next slide is talking about this year, which has just happened. So it's our third weekend, and it suddenly went a bit berserk, and we had 292 Fun Palaces with approximately just under 124,000 people taking part. So it's kind of an extraordinary growth and story for us, which we're still trying to take in. But as I say, I think it's something to do with saying yes. That's a little map of where they happened. And interestingly, this year, a lot of them, almost 60%, happened in libraries, which I think is probably not very surprising, given libraries are, free spaces for community, full of learning, full of arts, full of sciences, full of knowledge sharing, and they feel quite accessible. I've included over the next few slides a few pictures of some fun palaces and a few kind of quotes from fun palace makers. I won't go into reading each of them, but I guess the themes that I wanted to pull out are, I guess, this sense of community. And so, as I said earlier, I would absolutely include everyone, every kind of type of family. We have participants and makers at fun palaces from very, very small children up to people in their 90s. And it's very, very inclusive, and we want it to remain that way. We don't say no to anybody. We've had fun palaces in schools. We've had fun palaces that were just for adults, and that's absolutely fine. So I won't go into reading the quotes, but obviously the slides will be there to share with people afterwards. If you'd like to read them, you don't have a chance. A lot of what Fun Palaces does is about bringing people together who might not ordinarily meet or collaborate. The partnerships and the ongoing partnerships are something that are pretty special. We very much talk about the fact that Fun Palaces is as much, and if not more, about the process rather than the product of the weekend. That in the process of saying, yes, I would like to do something with my community, and I would like to plan that with my community, and I would like to ask people to get involved and see if they'd like to offer something, then new relationships, friendships, business relationships can happen as a result. And it's quite exciting. You don't really quite know where they'll go. In terms of creativity, it's also another lovely kind of coincidence with Fun Palaces. We think, again, it comes down to there's sort of a magic ingredient for Fun Palaces that we're not quite sure about, but I think it is something about saying yes. So in terms of the things that happen at a fun palace, as I'm sure you might be thinking, well, they look great, but what do you do? You do anything you like, and obviously a lot of that kind of revolves around food. We kind of loosely say to use arts and science-based activities, or that wide umbrella of culture, as a catalyst to get your community together. But it's often also a nice way of finding out your kind of secret skills of your neighbours, people that might go off to work in the morning, but you don't know anything about them apart from that they go off to work at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. and they come back and you see them in their garden. But actually a fun palace is a way to kind of uncover and unearth a little bit more of those people. And I think importantly, it is important to stress that we are a campaign, and it's a international campaign. And that sense of doing something over one weekend is really important for some people. For some it's less so. But lots of people like to feel connected, that they know that other people with that shared belief and spirit of collaboration and community, and our kind of tagline that everyone is an artist, a scientist, and everyone is an expert, that there is a weekend to kind of shine a light on those thoughts. That feels really important to people. So a little bit more, I don't have that many more slides, but I wanted to talk a bit more about kind of the activities and also some sort of top tips that I think I can share with you, but I'm really happy to talk with anyone afterwards if they have more questions, because I think Fun Palaces is so broad, that it's often a bit difficult to kind of get a hook into. But I hope I'm explaining it okay. So as I said, arts and science is loosely at the centre as a catalyst to bring communities together for a weekend. And we have had so many different bonkers, brilliant, clever, creative and imaginative activities happen. Many of them have involved food. Many kind of homemade science experiments often seem to involve food. There's always a kind of purple cabbage doing the rounds. And although that's kind of, I don't know, it might sound very simple or, I don't know, small somehow, but actually those kind of interesting things and experiments that anyone can do, from families to anyone kind of showing off something that they know, it really does kind of bring people together, and there's a sense of humour about it. We've had quite a lot of fun palaces who've had a focus in that activities or a theme about the environment, whether that's through permaculture, whether it's through gardening, whether it's through making sculptures or objects with recycled materials. That's been brilliant and hugely successful. Actually, this year, it somehow magically coincided with the International Cardboard Challenge, which I hadn't heard of either. But I know that in Cornwall, they put a call out just before their Fun Palace at Falmouth Art Gallery and Museum. And they had a bloke who lived nearby who said, oh yeah, I could get involved, you know, and sort of filled a room in the gallery with cardboard boxes from a supermarket and got them for free, got them donated. And he spent a whole day with people in there non-stop making sculptures, whether it's sheds, all sorts of things, bridges out of these boxes. So lots and lots of interesting different activities, which is why it's difficult to kind of be very definitive about it. It's whatever people want to bring and are interested in sharing or knowing, excuse me, or learning about. And yeah, these were I was thinking about this over the last week, my kind of top tips. And I'm sure there are more, but I guess I wanted to say that they can happen anywhere, that anyone can make one. It's a community event, and sometimes that's about being a bit enterprising with what type of space is used. And in between spaces are often quite interesting, visible spaces for events, which I'm sure other people will say too, because barriers to going inside a building can sometimes be big. But kind of, yeah, just being a bit aware of the spaces that you do have that might not be, or that might be underused. One very easy thing to do to kind of tackle that barrier of, rather than doing something for people, asking them what they would like to do, and kind of crowdsourcing your Fun Palace, is putting up posters or holding an event where you say, could everyone write down their secret skill, or could everyone write down something that they would like to learn? And can everyone also offer, is there something that you know about that you could teach? And you don't have to be a professional, but it does mean that you can be a little bit of an expert sometimes, or for that weekend. Lastly, that they can be, not lastly at all, they can be as big as or as small as you like. They don't have to last all weekend. They can last half an hour, they can last overnight. And I think, and I've been saying it throughout, but I think the best way to start is just to say yes, I will do it. And actually that acts as a bit of a kind of domino effect. If you start saying it, people start saying it. And so I suppose, kind of finishing up, I think I'm really interested in the work that the Crunch are doing in Sustain. I think all of these kind of initiatives, they're all about knowledge sharing, building that kind of sense of community, and looking at the resources that are within a community, and Fun Palaces is very much part of that. And it's an opportunity for any organisation. You know, if you have something that you want to kind of share with a Fun Palace community, and you feel like it might be a great way to access different demographics or different communities, then they're always welcoming people who want to offer an activity. We had the Crunch at a Fun Palace in Newcastle this year. I think we had one in Oldham and Manchester too. So because of the spirit of saying yes, hopefully Fun Palaces will say yes to you, or you may say yes to making a Fun Palace. And I think I'll finish off there.
That's super. Thank you ever so much, Hannah. That's just wonderful. And I know I've got some questions, but just a reminder to all our listeners out there, if you've got a question you want to pose to Hannah or any of the speakers, then use your chat box on the left-hand side. I'm now going to welcome Lorraine Maldoon from Eureka, the wonderful National Children's Museum. And Eureka have been part of the Crunch, and Lorraine's going to be talking about engaging families. Thanks very much, Lorraine.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. My name's Lorraine and I am from the National Children's Museum. As Nora said earlier, we're one of the centres that have been given the Crunch activities to deliver to families. I'm actually part of the front of house team, so I've been heavily involved in delivering the Crunch activities both in-house and at our outreach events. Because I am a deliverer, I'm not used to doing presentations like this, so this is my first webinar, so excuse me if I start to waffle or babble, but I'm so used to being on my feet at ground level, talking to the families and engaging them. So that's what I'm here to talk about today, how we on a ground level engage the families in the activities we received from Wellcome, the Crunch activities. Eureka, our philosophy is all about play. We want children to have a learning experience through being hands-on, getting involved, invoking all their senses. So they don't just sit and listen to us, they get hands-on, they interact, hopefully they can smell, and with the Crunch they could even taste our activities too. So it was a full multi-sensory experience. Now in-house and on outreach, we weren't the reason the families came. They didn't know anything about the Crunch. They just kind of happened upon us. So we saw it as just a brief moment that we got to spark an interest, to try and spark that interest between thinking of the food, the planet and the health and how they are all connected. So we wanted to do that in quite a short, quick way that we could get them to interact, but we also wanted to be able to extend it for anyone that was interested, want to stand around and ask us more questions. So we made sure we were fully prepared. So the first thing we did with the activities is we got together as a team, we got them all out of the box and we had a good play to decide what kind of things the children would want to do with the things that we were given. Once we did that, we came out with a list of activities that we thought would be brilliant to deliver on floor level. So looking at the activities, we wanted to make them multi-sensory, so we wanted the children to be involved as much as possible, and hopefully once you've engaged those children as well, the family join in as well and they all become part of that experience. So we wanted to think of ways to engage the children. Our audience generally at Eureka is younger children, so we're having families with younger children, but on the outreach events there were older ones as well, so we did want to make sure that it was fully accessible for all ages. So we decided that we would make sure there was lots of props to get involved with, lots of information on additional cards that they could delve into if they wanted, and we wanted to use stories, games, and we wanted to keep it quite quickly moving as well. So we developed a kind of a carousel of activities that could last between 10 minutes, half an hour before swapping on to the next one, and that way families could come back to us if they were interested in one activity. Chances were they were going to come back to us and do another activity with us as well. Just before I talk about the activities, I just want to say, of course, we had all the risk assessments in place. We had to make sure families are aware of the allergens and hygiene, health and safety. I'm not going to go into how we did all that, just assume that they were in place, and I'm going to talk about how we actually engaged with the families on the day. So I'm going to use a few of the activities that the Crunch sent us and just talk through how we delivered them and how we engaged our families. So the first activity I'm going to talk about is our rolling oats. So the families would happen upon us if when we were at Eureka, we were in our All About Me section, which is all to do with the body and healthy eating. So it actually tied in really well with our Crunch activities. When we saw the families, we would sit simply ask them a question to start getting them involved. So, have you ever eaten porridge? Answer: most likely one person in the family has at least tried porridge. So we would invite them to see where their porridge came from. So we would hand the plant to the children and say, did you know this is how porridge grows? So we'd let them have a smell, have a feel, and even rustle it so they could hear how it would blow in the wind. And then we would develop the story from there to show them how that would then become the end product that they would eat. So we talked about the harvested grains, the groats. We had examples of those out, and we'd let them know that by squashing or rolling them flat, you would get a rolled oat, which is exactly what you get in your bag of porridge. That could be used to make flapjacks, muesli, biscuits, all those lovely things that they do like to eat themselves. Would you like to have a go at rolling your own oats? So we got them to pour the oats into the mill and get them to use their muscles to turn the mill and roll their oats themselves. And this was the point when we could then talk about the health benefits of the oats as well while they were busy. So they were actually staying interactive as well as listening to us. So they're really good for your heart. They lower cholesterol, full of lots of fibre, so great for the digestive system. It's got their attention. You have a good healthy poo at the end of it. That helps the parents get interacted as well. While the children were rolling oats, they would quite often start picking up the packets themselves or any of our information cards. That's where they might ask questions. And quite often as well, they said with crops, they assumed crops were all wheat. So they were amazed that there were all these other different crops growing around that they weren't aware of. So that was a really nice, simple activity. It followed a nice, natural storyline. And at the end, the children got to take those oats away with them. Quite often, they'd stand there and start eating them themselves, which amazed the parents. They thought, oh, wow, they're eating healthy and wouldn't have to do anything because they got involved themselves. It's something they wanted to enjoy and eat themselves as well. So it was one of our favourite activities, this one. A full multi-sensory approach to learning. And they got to touch, taste, see, do it all themselves. So that was one of the most successful activities at engaging the families together. Next activity I'm going to talk about is our chocolate story. This is one of the favourites the parents liked. So again, to engage the children, we would get the cocoa pods out and shake them and invite the children to come and have a feel themselves. They would shake them, maybe smell, and then we would challenge them to what they were holding. Do you know what this is? We had some amazing answers. Quite often they thought they were nuts or coconuts. And if they were still weren't guessing, we thought, oh, well, shall we show you what's inside? So if we break open the pod, inside you'll find the beans. So we would then let them smell them, have another think about it. They were still struggling, we'd let them know that the beans are then crushed open to reveal the nibs, and again let them have a smell of the nibs as well. Quite often they would have guessed it by this point, or the parents will chip in, maybe giving them clues. We would tell them it's something that's really tasty to eat, and eventually, hopefully one of the children will shout out, chocolate. So do you know your chocolate grows on trees? So this is where we had lots of information cards, so we could show them the pods growing on the cacao trees. They were then opened up and the farmers laid the beans out on the banana leaves to dry. That was then packed and sent around the world for us to turn into chocolate. And we had lots of information from the Wellcome pack as well, showing them how chocolate was made so they could look at them. They could also have a taste of the cacao nibs if they wanted to. We just had to warn them that they were very, very bitter, but most children were up for it. They were interested to see what healthy raw chocolate would taste like. So once we'd talked through the story, they knew how the chocolate was made. We'd maybe ask them their favourite kinds of chocolate. We would then introduce them to the evil villains that were attacking our chocolate trees, witch's broom and frosty pod rot. And this is where the parents started to get very interested. We'd show them where the cacao trees would grow and that these diseases are starting to attack that. And that, in fact, by the year 2020, demand would outstrip supply. Much to the parents' horror, chocolate was starting to run out. And that developed into them asking more questions about how they were farmed and what the farmers were going to do if they were losing their cocoa trade. So that was a really interesting one. Again, it was a nice, simple story. They got engaged, they could feel, touch, taste again. So that was another really good interactive activity that we used. Talking about the future of food with this one then led us on to, well, we may be running out of chocolate. But it's not all doom and gloom, because we have the food of the future, insects. We like to start this activity off with a lot of cards on the table of just pictures of insects, and we let the children know that millions of people around the world already do eat insects. So this got about conversations about I'm a celebrity and thinking that they had to eat them raw and bite their heads off. So what we did was we asked them to turn maybe a card over of an insect that interested them, and on the back it would show you how they were prepared in a certain country. So it'd tell you what country prepares them, how they eat them, and even what they might taste like as well. So they could engage with that activity as long as they wanted. They could just turn over a couple cards, they could turn over them all, just depending on how much they wanted to know about it. We then led that on to why would we be eating these foods in the future. We talked about how farming is not sustainable at the rate we're going through. And again, we had big laminate cards to show this. We compared the insects to beef, pork and chicken, and we were looking at things of the water used to farm them, how much feed it is to farm them, the amount of the animal we ate, and each time the insects came up with a big tick compared to the foods that we currently eat in this country, the beef, the pork and the chicken. And one of the children's favourites as well was the greenhouse gases. So when we talked about how much the animals trump, of course insects were the winner again. So with all that information armed under their belts, we then introduced the insects that they could try for themselves. So we had some dried mealworms and we had some dried crickets. We found the younger children were always up for the challenge. They don't have any misconceptions about food, so they would quite often just eat them away. They would then maybe challenge dads to it. Dads like to, of course, be macho, brave, we can do this. So quite often they would do it. Mums not quite as keen, and older children as well, I think, because they had these misconceptions of I'm a celebrity, those kind of insects. They weren't as up for it. But we also had on hand as well information that they would appear as a flower first, and we did have some protein bars that we bought in as well. So if anyone wanted to try it in that form, they could do. This was always a really popular activity, and especially with the teenagers as well that wanted to dare each other to eat them. We had lots of people filming each other eat them, so it was always a really fun activity when it came around. So again, another brilliant story from start to finish that they got involved in themselves. The next activities, they were a lot more demanding for us. So these are the kind of activities we did advertise times for. So making our tortillas, and the next slide I'll come on to was the pedal powered drinks as well. So we did advertise times, and this developed more of a crowd, and it was more of a presentation. So we would get the parents up to help grind the corn, and then we would get the children to put them in the bowl, mix the ingredients together, and while we were cooking them, we'd talk to the children about the different kinds of things corn's used for, how it's grown, and then show them examples of things like popcorn, sweet corn in a tin, and even other kinds of things that corn's involved in they might not have thought of, like the making of carpets and batteries, which always surprised the parents as well. Because the children were involved in it as well, they got to press the tortilla shapes out themselves. They were always more up for trying, and we've got a lovely picture on the end there. I remember that day where the two guys felt like it was their tortilla, they'd made it themselves, so they ate the whole thing, much to the surprise of the parents. So again, another fully interactive experience. They got to smell, talk, and even got to eat their tortillas at the end. Next was what we affectionately called the lumpy bike. It developed that name quite quickly when we realised that our fruits and vegetables weren't very smooth in the cup at the end. They were great big lumps. Nora touched on this earlier. We did actually get in touch with a market in Halifax. Any fruits and vegetables they were going to throw away, they provided to us. So we would present this activity again, letting them know that these fruits and vegetables were going to be thrown away. There's nothing wrong with them, still full of lots of nutrients, lots of vitamins, lots of minerals. So we got the children to start putting in the different fruits and vegetables into the blender as we talked about vitamins, what kind of parts of your body they're good for. So we were always educating while they were getting the things ready. Then we went over to the blender bike, and because it was quite far to reach the pedals, it was the older children and the parents that got to do a lot of the work. But we did get the little ones to maybe stand and maybe move the pedals around themselves. They were getting involved. And of course, at the end, as we poured the drinks out, both parents and children got to taste them. So from fruits and veg that was supposed to be in the bin, they had a nice delicious lumpy drink for themselves. If they couldn't come to us, we got the hostess trolley on and we went out to them. This was just a quick activity, finding iron in Rice Krispies. So first of all, we got them to find the iron fish within the Rice Krispies so we could talk about how different cultures get iron in their diet. We then introduced how our cereals are fortified with iron, got the children to crush the Rice Krispies themselves and using the magnet find the iron that was actually in the breakfast cereal. And other couple of quick games as well. Global cup of tea or coffee, we got them to place magnets around the board, showing them where, even though we just had a cup of tea or coffee in our hand, it didn't just come from around the corner. Lots of different countries were involved. Again, we had extra cards out so they could see what a Russian miner looked like, see the coffee farmer in Brazil or the sugarcane worker. So it kind of mentally or visually meant more to them watching all these activities unfold and seeing that their cup of tea actually did come right from around the world and not from just around the corner. Quick game with the how much water do we eat. We turned it into a play cards right kind of game, and this was great for the older children. In fact, both these activities were brilliant for older children. It tied in with their geography and things as well. With the game, we gave them the first one. They had to say higher or lower for the next card, and we ripped off the answer. So it became quite a family game, lots of cheering, and they really got into that one. So that was quite a few of the activities that we used. Like I said, we did those on a carousel, nice short activities. Where we could, we used a chalk display to let them know what was coming up next. And then we did have other activities out on display that the parents could dip in and out to, talk to their children about them, talk to us if they wanted to. And we had the game Nora mentioned earlier, the Hungry City digital game, was out on the tablet at the back of the activities as well, so they could dip in and out as much as they wanted to. We wanted it to be their learning experience, so they wanted to get involved as much as they could, and so many families did keep coming back to us. They wanted to know what else we had to say, so hopefully we sparked that interest in looking at the connection between their health, their planet, and the food they eat. They then could go forward to the Crunch website and learn a little bit more for themselves. So that comes to the end of my presentation. I think you've all heard how to ask questions, so I will be here later to answer any. Thank you very much for listening.
That's fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Lorraine. That's a real whiz through all the wonderful activities that the Crunch have been working on, obviously with the Families programme. Going to now pass over to Kira from Manchester, who's been working on a fantastic project called Sow the City. Thanks very much, Kieran.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for the slight delay there. I hope everyone is well and happy. Been really interested myself just to listen to the other speakers today. So I'll certainly be looking forward to getting in touch with some of those. And just on Lorraine at the Eureka Museum there, I had the pleasure of visiting there recently with my family, and yeah, really fascinating day out. Our son loved it. And also what I found, just on a practical note for things that might perhaps deter a lot of families, was that Eureka operate a ticket system where once you've visited, you can use the ticket for the rest of the year. So encouraging families to go back and sort of form a relationship was something that really stood out to us, and I'm sure would help address the barrier for many. So, okay, my name is Kieran McGlasson. I'm a director of Sow the City, which, as it says on the screen there, we work to build a healthier city where everyone can grow their own food. We're a social enterprise established in 2009, just literally with a very small grant that bought us some, certainly bought my colleagues some seeds and a few bags of compost. And it has now grown into one of the leading community food grown projects here in Manchester, and now Northwest was sort of like moving into adjoining boroughs and whatnot. There's a picture of my colleague and I there. I'm the one on the right, just as the carrot, and my colleague is the banana there. So whilst we're directors, which sounds a very official term, doesn't it, we try to get as hands-on, and we want to get as hands-on as often as we can out and about at events and everything. So moving on, I wanted to talk to you about two projects that we've done in the last sort of year, 18 months, that one called Growing Communities there, and the other called Home, which is an acronym for the area in which it's based, called Old Moat, you can see in the middle there. This area, I want you to picture a food desert. It's an interwar housing estate, possibly of about 750 households. Some people have to, there's no local shops. Some people have to walk up to 2 to 3 miles to even buy any food. When they get there, they might find that's a fried chicken, let alone any form of vegetable. So a lot of issues with people actually their access to food. But really interestingly, and the way we operate as an organisation, and I would really advocate this, is that yes, this housing estate is full of issues, the deprivation, the highest rate of free school meals, the unemployment, etc., etc. I think you get the bedroom tax, all this sort of stuff. How we like to operate, though, is to, yes, acknowledge them, of course, but to really look at the strengths of an area and focus on the strengths rather than dwelling on the issues. And that's through both these projects and how I'll outline to you shortly, something that we really try to do. So the housing stock in this food desert, this area, what was really interesting, what struck us, was that this area was developed on Garden City principles in the interwar period. So each of the households had an enormous garden about the size of an allotment, and they were actually designed for the whole sort of dig for Britain kind of thing, you know, where households had to grow their own food to survive. So we really found here as one of those strengths I was telling you, that whilst food and obesity and food poverty were really an issue in this area, the solution was actually staring us in the face, and it was on the doorsteps of people's houses. So on the subject of doorsteps, I'm shooting ahead of myself here. Just the usual sort of stuff, but I'll move on to this point in a minute, but the fourth point down there, absolute critical to everything we've been doing on these projects has been to find local people and to train them up, give them ownership, and to capitalise on their strengths, their knowledge, their local accent, the people they know, the places they know where to go. Those sort of like social networks have been absolutely fascinating, and there's all kinds, if you're interested, there's all kinds of information by a chap called Malcolm Gladwell on sort of like social networks and social campaigns and everything like that, and it's very much this sort of like tapping into world that we've looked to do. But anyway, this slide shows like once we've received a green light for a project, be it from the housing association in question or maybe some grant funding we've applied for and been successful in, we'll then, you know, pull everyone together, spend a good couple of months getting branding set up, getting the program put together, and recruiting and training these people that I'll explain in a minute, called Growing Champions, and then developing places to train people. So this is the key one really, and what I wanted to talk to you about today is that I'm sure many people, certainly a lot of the facilitators here and members of the community are quite familiar with that syndrome when a community event's put on and you just see the same old people turning up. The same people who are great, they get involved in everything, they possibly get involved with too much, but the people you really need to be speaking with about food poverty are absent from the room, or they're absent from the training, or whatever. So to address this problem, we sought to go and find the people that are often termed, or is it hard to reach, or the seldom heard, and to reach them we would do mass estate-wide door knocking, and having employed community food champions or growing champions, whatever the term is. Now there's 3 pictured on the screen here. The smiles weren't just for the camera, these were sort of like the infectious sort of personalities that we saw in these people when we were out looking for them. And that, I think, is lesson number 1, you know, absolutely infectious. You know, we've all heard the door knock go before, and you sort of like, you go, ooh, heck, what's this going to be? Is it something, ooh, is it a takeaway flyer? Is it a tax inspector or whatever? To open a door and have someone with a beaming smile saying to you, how do you fancy some broad beans, is quite a surreal moment, but one that certainly resonates and reaches people. So our food champions, after all the health and safety and all that sort of stuff, because we're sending people out into communities and knocking on random doors, after all that sort of thing, we would work with them to put together a package of equipment. So what are we going to be giving away? So in these instances, we gave away small propagators and free seeds, very common kinds of seeds, things that are easy to grow at home, things that people would recognise, so tomatoes, sweet corn the kids loved, lettuce, herbs for a window ledge, things that older people could do. But also the critical thing was that once you'd sort of reached them and held their sort of attention, if you like, through a friendly local conversation on the doorstep, it gave you the platform to do wider signposting. And I'll talk about some of those in a minute, but say like signposting to training, to events we might have on. We even set up a healthy takeaway in one of the areas, which ran every week, serving sort of like healthy yet recognisable kind of street food, so vegan burgers, flapjacks and soups, all that sort of thing. And what we found from doing all the door knocking, and question you might ask, how did people cart all this stuff around? But we equipped them with those sort of granny type trolleys, if you like, you know, the sort of shopping trolleys that were full of propagators, full of seeds, full of flyers, and off people would go. What we found is that in an area of, you know, street upon street and that on average, 1 in 3 houses would answer the door and want to take a kit, so actually be interested. Like, obviously a lot of households would be out during the day, and a lot of households might not be interested. It'd be thanks but no thanks sort of thing. But 1 in 3 we would reach, and I'll tell you about the numbers in a second. Another interesting slant, just the final one on our door knocking approach, was that you can also work with housing providers to actually target houses in certain areas where we might know things about, you know, if families are resident, if it's single mothers that are resident, any other issues. And of course, as we're doing this through the growing season, and particularly we'd encourage, you know, our growing champions work together to not just do 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, but to go out on summery evenings and weekends. You could obviously hear the laughter of play in gardens and whatnot, and it would sometimes be a looking over the fence sort of thing, or over the hedge and asking. So key thing for us was to go out and get the people. We'd go out and find them, and it would be on doorsteps, and door knocking also stands for other places, you know, busy community hubs outside the local GPs, in the street even, mums and toddler groups, all that sort of thing, anywhere where people would gather. So what would we be doing? If you'd got a rapport with them, and if they accepted the kit and wanted to have a go, we'd have a programme of events set up, where I'm sure people who are experienced in doing community events is that we need to make them fun. So we'd bring out old fairground games, you know, Bat the Rat, what's the one there, the Coconut Shy, Worm Charming Championships, all these things. And these were really to occupy the children. With the children came parents, and at that point we were able to engage parents around growing, give away plants, give away seeds, have that interaction with them, do raised bed making workshops, etc., alter at events as a great place to engage with people further. We'd also set up a programme of courses, and what was quite nice, you can see with the flyer there, we had, say, like 4 cooking courses, 4 growing courses, and we would invest in creating garden space. Really basic stuff, you know, it's not rocket science this, but we didn't want it to be too daunting and sort of allotment syndrome, but really sort of like friendly spaces, giving ideas about what people could do in their own gardens and at home. And then we would train groups there. So processes, they've been met on their doorstep, they've been interested, they've had some free stuff. Then we've followed it up with a phone call from a food champion in the week, and then we've got families to go along and even set up things like crash facilities at the training venues so that mothers who brought children could, do the training whilst have their children looked after. Key obvious lesson had to be really mindful when engaging families that, we'd round off any training by 3 p.m. at the latest so they could nip next door to the local school. And through all this work would be, setting up not only growing training that was really, Joe Blog stuff, really easy to understand, really inspirational, but also other things like, how to keep a chicken workshop or wild food forages, things that people could access and that were fun. And I think that's really key to it with a lot of these things, is to make it, because you've got to remember the people that we got to these training sessions, around up to 10 each, before they had that knock on the door of a friendly individual, they had never even considered growing their own food before. So, we really had to make it easy for them to understand and also achievable in a single session of up to 4 hours where they could get all the basics, because we didn't want to put people off and families off by saying, oh, you're interested in training, but now you have to sign up for a 6-week course or something horrendous like that. And we also followed up. And so we worked with a local contractor of the Housing Association who was throwing away lots of timber, offcuts of timber, perfectly good timber, into skips and landfill and that whole agenda, and carting lots of unused timber around and burning it, whatever they do. So we worked with them to actually make raised beds. So if a family or an individual had come along, we would then come along to the training. So we met them on the doorstep, they'd come along to the training, we'd have a great day, give them more freebies there. We'd then send them home, or we wouldn't send them home, we would deliver them a raised bed in their garden with the compost or with the growing medium, and give them, an hour's consultation or, advice about where to situate their raised bed, what might work well. And oh, by the way, they've got enormous gardens, so they thought about doing this there. And there's a picture of a fruit tree there as well, because we also budgeted for heritage fruit trees, because, there's a lot of space here. So let's, the point I'm making is, if there's a budget there, follow it up. Don't just get people along to the training and then send them home. They've learned everything that ticks our box. Keep with it. We kept going back to see people. We wanted to find out how people were getting on. And, it's the opposite of Gardener's World syndrome, where they see, everything's perfect and manicured. It's just the fact people have got things to grow was, they were so proud of that. But we'd also find that, families had started doing this together. The chap in the top right there, he was one of our food champions, but he got so inspired by all this that he started digging his own garden up and planting it up in the heart of this estate, in a cul-de-sac, a little, real rabbit warren of streets and that. And suddenly his front garden that was full of dog poo, cigarettes and chewing gum wrappers and whatever, suddenly it had turned into this oasis of fruit trees and veggies growing, which was a real statement to, when there's interactions in an area and people passing and conversations. And of course him there booming with laughter and digging it up. It was creating this activity in an otherwise really bland estate. Another key thing of the all from a door knock or a chat in the street was to, once you built up a database of people who took kits, you could then get, stimulate some activity about would they be interested in creating a community garden on a piece of redundant land, or forming a growing group, a community growing group. So, for example, I should have put a before picture there really, but the image at the bottom had been 30 years, derelict land, brambles, shopping trolleys, dead cats, all that sort of thing. And the group that we formed in that area and supported wanted to create a community garden, but with a recycling theme. So you can see maybe there's a little bath there, there's salvaged pallets, there's tyres that flowers were grown out of, and the group helped make this garden with us. And we would all the risk stuff and managed risk, of course, but we would, from day one, we would work with them in creating the site and through to managing it. So there you go. But back to the local voice and the strength again. If there were growing groups in the area, obviously they're a fantastic resource to support, because they have networks with families. So let's support those groups to do stuff. And whilst we maybe took a lead at an earlier event, come a lot of the harvest events later in the programme, we asked the group how they wanted to deliver it, and we supported them to do what they wanted, because they're a damn sight better at engaging people with a local Mancunian voice and knowledge of their estate than I am. I don't live in that area. I'm not from it. I'm a middle class professional, or some other horrendous term. I'm not living in this world that these people are. So it's all about supporting. And so what did we do last year? Well, in those 2 projects I've identified, we kept a record of every house. We gave a growing kit away to everyone that came along to a training session, everyone that came along to an event. And over a summer, we managed, in one housing estate, this was the bigger project, was the housing estate and a wider area, which was a significant portion of South Manchester. We managed to engage and have meaningful conversations with nearly 2,300 people. So yeah, we're very proud. I've just looked at the time.
Thanks ever so much, Karen. Sorry, I'm going to have to move on. Just in the spirit of the fact, I know we've got lots of Q and questions coming in, and also that we've still got Claire to go on the next project. So sorry to butt in, but just so that we can try and keep a bit better time. I hope that's all right, Karen. But lots of questions coming in for you, so I want to make sure people get the opportunity to ask those as well, if that's all right.
Sure.
I'll just take this opportunity to introduce Claire. Claire from Plymouth University is now going to talk about a wonderful project in Plymouth called Grow, Share and Cook. Thanks very much, Claire.
Hi Claire, can you just unmute yourself, please? This is Alize. Just click on the little mic beside your... Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm now unmuted, apparently. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Yeah, I was just saying how inspired I am by all the presentations I've heard so far. So well done, good work, everybody. It's a privilege to be here, and I'd like to send apologies from Darren Halifax, who unfortunately can't be here, from Plymouth City Council. But I'm kind of the next best thing, because I did the independent evaluation of this project. So the Plymouth Cities of Service Grow, Share, Cook project was funded by Nesta, and it ran between 2014 and 2016. And the aim of the project was to really improve the food network in Plymouth, tackling food inequalities by encouraging a volunteer network to link the growing and cooking of food to the people who need it most, and in this case that was families. Now, just to give a little bit of context, we know, it's well known that health inequalities exist in all UK cities, and Plymouth is no exception. In 2013, the Plymouth Fairness Commission showed clearly that people could not afford to eat healthily, and this was particularly the case for fresh fruit and vegetables. So the Cities of Service, the Grow, Share, Cook project was set up in response to this, and the amazing partners that we've worked with and the volunteers that have been recruited are changing this. So the project, let me just move on the slide, so I'm pressing the wrong button. The project commissioned various services, and the Grow and Share was commissioned by Tamar Grow Local Community Interest Company, and the Cook aspect was commissioned by Food is Fun. And the Cities of Service, our Plymouth portal, was used in order to recruit volunteers across the city. And we had volunteers that were working on the Grow and the Share and the Cook aspects, offering free vegetables for a year, and also teaching the participants, the families, how to cook the vegetables. So a range of partners involved, which is really important in such a complex intervention, to have a strong steering group made up of a range of partners. There were a massive variety of activities occurred for Grow, Share, Cook, and I'm going to say a little bit more detail about that later. But all these activities had far-reaching impact. The Pots and Pans Amnesty, there was a great seed giveaway, various parties, and inspiring volunteer awards. And the far-reaching impacts reached all the partners involved, and that included the volunteers, the stakeholders, and the families themselves. An amazing 82 volunteers recruited themselves for the project, including the Grow, the Share, and the Cook aspect, and more people have been joining as the project started. Most importantly, the impact of the project then, we saw 139 of our most disadvantaged families receiving fortnightly delivery of fruit and veg straight to their door, over 25,000 portions of fruit and vegetables given out to people, 2,000 individuals being fed, including families receiving the delivery, food bank users, and people accessing the soup run, so targeting food poverty there. 216 pots and pans donated during the amnesty, and 90% of food bag recipients reported improved cooking skills, and 100% of those reported a healthier diet as a result of Grow, Share, Cook. Now, moving on to my role in the project. I'm a registered dietitian and a public health nutritionist, and I'm carrying out quite a lot of local research in relation to food and engagement. And I was commissioned as an independent researcher to evaluate the process of the Grow, Share, Cook project. I've got a link to the final evaluation report available on my slide there, so you should be able to see what was carried out. But this is a really crucial aspect to any complex intervention or even smaller interventions, as I'm sure everyone will agree. The aim of the evaluation was to identify what Grow, Share, Cook was delivering, to critically assess how it was implemented, and to explore its acceptability to the stakeholders that were involved. Now, there were a range of stakeholders involved, as I've already indicated, but I'm going to be focusing for the purposes of this presentation on the family involvement and their engagement. So the objectives set out from the aims of the evaluation was to map the intervention first and foremost, and then carry out various consultations with key stakeholders involved in the project. And these involved interviews, surveys, and focus groups. And then finally, there were a range of different observations across all the various activities in the project. Now, this slide probably isn't particularly clear, but it really, if anything, it's an indicator of the complex nature of the Grow, Share, Cook project. There was a lot of different layers to the project, but at the top in green, you can see all the Grow aspects, showing the extent to which growing activities increased in the city for the duration of the project and beyond. The Share aspect, kind of indicated in orange here, showed the way that the food that was grown and distributed was distributed to the various kind of at-risk population groups, namely the families, but also food bank users, soup run users, etc. And then, of course, there was the really important cook aspect, of which there were two different kind of rounds of very simple cooking demonstrations that allowed the families to learn how to cook the vegetables that were provided on a weekly basis. Now, what I wanted to do next was, obviously in the spirit of what we're talking about, which is family engagement, I wanted, the report provides, I mean, it's a 56-page report, so it's quite hefty bedtime reading for anybody, but I wanted to just provide a relevant and concise summary of key findings that are pertinent to the family engagement aspect of the project, because our end user beneficiaries were kind of disadvantaged families. And we did very well to recruit over 100 families to this project. Now, I'm not going to say that recruitment was easy. It was far from easy, as is quite commonly the case with disadvantaged groups. And I was very interested to hear about Kieran's door knocking experiences, a really interesting way to look at things. But our recruitment and kind of response and attendance was really enhanced by the very strong volunteer and support network we had as part of the steering group. Communication was very, very strong, and we had a team of people that actually phoned the families to attend so that they didn't feel left out, and trying to kind of break down some of those barriers to non-attendance. So communication was key there, and our excellent food workers ensured that communication was regular, non-threatening, and all the things that you would imagine would be really useful. The leadership provided by the steering group was also really important. We had a range of different partners included on that steering group, and I think their voice was really important so that we could monitor the effectiveness as we went through. The families also responded to say that they really enjoyed the fact that the short cooking demo style sessions that were provided as part of the project were really accessible for them, and particularly in relation to the short timing of those, in relation to their childcare provision and that sort of thing, made it very meaningful for them. They made a lot of really, really useful positive suggestions for improvements of the project. All of them said they wanted it to continue beyond the grant. And there were suggestions that there was an awareness that providing free vegetables on a fortnightly basis probably wasn't sustainable, and they agreed that possibly providing subsidised veg bags would be perfectly acceptable as an alternative. So that's something to consider moving forward. And they were also very keen to have more involvement with the growing aspect of the project. So again, something to take forward into the future. But in terms of social capital and enhancing the social aspect, I think this comes through very clearly, because the social connections responded by the families involved, all of them stated that, that the improved relations in family, exciting activities for children to get involved really made the project meaningful. And I think where this is really important for taking forward into future projects is the participatory empowerment approaches that feed very nicely into public health kind of intervention approaches, which is really where I come from. And this fosters community engagement and social sustainability, which are all really important aspects. And these are certainly aspects that we'll be taking forward into the future of the project. And just to finish off then, there were loads of amazing quotes, and you can see them in the report that I've provided through my link. But one of the respondents who was so enthusiastic about the project, one of the family members, for me, it's broadened the horizons of what can be achieved in the kitchen as well as in your kids' bellies. It keeps them happy and keeps me quiet, happy days. And I think that sums up the spirit. This was a very positive project. That's all I'm going to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
That's super. Thanks ever so much, Claire. And it also just highlights how important it is to get some of that, the measurement of some of the outcomes, certainly in terms of a project being able to go forward as well. We are a bit tight on time, but if everyone's okay, I will run slightly over. If you have to leave, then we understand, but obviously this will be available afterwards anyway. So just a few questions that have come up. Kieran, one for you, a couple of questions about how you actually recruited your growing champions and how you actually retained them as well. That's one of the key things coming out.
Okay. Firstly, really sorry everyone for waffling on there. I couldn't catch I didn't have the agenda in front of me on the screen, so I must have got lost in a world of what I was talking about, so apologies for that. In terms of the question,
sorry, what came across there was your real passion, so thank you.
Oh, good. In terms of the question, recruitment, yeah, we did a range of things, from sort of like advertising in local voluntary organisations, but that obviously was citywide. But the key thing was putting notices up in community hubs. But we also had the benefit in this area, when I was talking about strengths, that there were a group of local people who were already trying to, they had an interest in the environment. So we supported them throughout, and we asked them who they knew, and we came up with a a sort of list of people that, they have the criteria, they're friendly, approachable, we're looking for a job perhaps, this would really help them and give them something to do, etc. So we went via a local group. And how we retained them? Well, we employed them as far as we could on a nominal basis, what the budget allowed, but we sort of supported them. We sent them to relevant training, fun things, networks, really made them feel like a part of everything, and we took them out for dinner to say thank you and sent them related jobs and stuff post the project, which is obviously a summer-based one. So we just tried to look after them as best we could, really.
And how did you actually, questions come in, how did you actually hook them, before they sort of closed the door when you were trying to recruit them?
Sure, yeah. Well, it's this whole sort of like marketing theory, the elevator pitch, isn't it, sort of thing. But hook was absolutely essential. We really chose our food champions carefully because, as I said, that smile was key, that whole smile and approach. But often it would be something quite ridiculous. I know we're very serious and logos and everything and whatnot like that. But often it would be like, how do you fancy some free broad beans or something like that? And the person would almost be taken by shock, obviously if it was appropriate. But and that would start a sort of intrigue, and we tried to make, what I'm saying is we played on humour and approachability and tried to sort of like make people feel at ease at first rather than, oh, you're interested in growing trading, and it was more of a fun approach.
And have you got any more background information that people can access on the project, Kieran, that can go to afterwards?
Yeah. On our website, which you should easily be able to find us, but www.sothecity.org. We have a project section there, which gives a brief overview. But I've put my email address in the little chat thing there, and we've got an evaluation presentation of both projects, which goes into a lot more detail. I obviously just skirted over that, so I'd say to contact me.
Okay, just a question really to both Claire and Kieran from Sally. Did anyone grow in anyone else's garden with or without permission? So that's a bit of guerrilla gardening, but also sort of the land share approach to gardening as well and food growing.
Does Claire want to go first, as I've just...
I can respond to that up to a point. We had some really interesting kind of anecdotal responses about relationships that were set up through the process of the work that we did, and it might not necessarily be guerrilla gardening per se, but we had some interesting kind of anecdotal stories about, one of the drivers of the van who was delivering veg ended up kind of playing chess with one of the family recipients, and we also had quite a lot of sharing of ideas about growing, but particularly cooking. I mean, cooking was kind of the main engagement of families in our project, but I think the next stage would be for the growing part of that to be extended and expanded. But I'll hand over to Kieran if he's got any more.
Yeah, certainly. What we fostered, and in the presentation I can say we certainly fostered a community spirit, and one of the growing champions actually turned her garden into a garden centre, in inverted commas, with polytunnels and everything she could salvage from places. And she grew plug plants to donate to people in and their own gardens, so not strictly in other people's. We also had other food champions identify that somebody gave them they realised the potential that they'd been walking past every day, and so they would knock on neighbours' doors and ask if they could plant them up with potatoes and things. A lot of the neighbours might have been nervous at first, and so we haven't been able to follow that through yet because of the programme. I also have to say that the housing association was quite nervous because of various things, like the whole, strangers coming into the garden and stuff like that. But we also had a lot of people asking us, saying, hey, have you got a team of people around? Could they come and do our garden? So I would say that, excuse the pun, there was certainly appetite for it, and I really wish we could follow that up. It's just that it's completely funding reliant at the moment. But there is so much land there. Some of these gardens are like tennis courts, and they're sat there doing nothing. So, I think you get the point.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be a fantastic project which has sort of grown called Food Up Front that was in London, and that was about using unused front gardens because obviously it's easier in terms of accessibility, etc. as well. Another question that's come up is really about sort of sustainability and how projects can sustain their good work over the long term. Kieran, do you want to have a go at that? And then maybe I'll open that up to our other presenters as well.
Yeah, sure. I think that's my biggest negative. I'm a very positive person, but that's something that we've felt really upset about, is that these were one-year programs, projects that were funding reliant, the usual stuff, and then ran out, and often we wouldn't know we were doing them until the February and, you know, obviously April growing season and everything we had to pack in. So I think the key thing we've learned is that, you know, we really believe, because of all the outcomes that we've measured, and that this merits a much bigger sort of like 3-year program where that sort of everything you've built up can be sustained, and we could, you know, continue the momentum and etc. But that requires time, and time is something, as a small organisation, we don't have 6 weeks, 2 months to do a major funding application. We need to be earning our bread and butter. So that is the sort of issue we have, unfortunately.
Anyone else want to contribute to that at all?
Yeah, I'll say a small bit on that. I mean, I think one of the clear kind of lamentations, as it were, from our participants was that the project was so short. I mean, it ran for 18 months in the first instance, and in fact, like Kieran said, trying to find a suitable kind of seasonal growing slot in an 18-month period is not ideal. So it does need to be longer term. But I mean, the Grow Share Cook project is continuing. We managed to get funding to continue it, albeit on a very small level. But some of the recommendations I made in the kind of evaluation report related to the possibility of setting up a social enterprise and trying to look at ways of working more effectively with partners. I mean, the biggest issue we face is that funding is being cut, public health funding is being cut across all the sectors, funding is being cut. So we have to get a bit more creative about how we kind of join forces. And that's the biggest challenge. But we have a lot of really exciting partners working on various food activities in Plymouth. And we're hoping that, you know, we can strengthen the activities that we do and share some of the resource and move the project forward more effectively.
Sally's just come in from London to say, after the 18 months, how many people are actually continuing to grow on their own? And is there anything in place to actually measure that?
Is this directed at me?
Yes, sorry, Claire, yes.
Well, just to explain, maybe I didn't make it particularly clear. Most of the family engagement on the Grow Share Cook project related to the cooking, because
Nice.
it was such a short project, 18 months. We did get allotment sites set up, but the actual engagement with the families themselves and the growing didn't really happen in that time frame. Although it was suggested by the families that was a really important next step. So in fact, I'm sorry I can't give advice about how the metrics for measuring kind of growing success. I have been involved in a project in the past that asked some basic questions about confidence with growing, and so if somebody does want to get in touch, I'm quite happy to pass on some resources for basic metrics for kind of measuring growing activities in relation to well-being. But that is I agree that's quite a challenging thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just very quickly, if time allows, we, as part of our door knocking, we did a random door knock visit, if you like, to 50 properties to see how they were getting on. Random ones out the hundreds that had taken a kit, and that was really interesting, what that said. And the community group I mentioned in that small area, there was sort of like a down back of the sofa amount of funding left over from the overall programme, and they said to us that in order to go forward with their own funding applications and things like that, what would be really useful was to do a membership survey. So everyone we'd signposted to them, they went round and called and went round and rang to see what people were doing and what their needs were going forward, and that, so it wasn't just lost. And that was really strengthened the database. And through that process, we found that lots of people were still growing. I think the key, again, is just that sort of like momentum sort of thing from our side.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I've got a whole list of questions which we're not going to have time to get through today, but there's obviously been some key themes coming through. Obviously, food allows us to use all our senses, and also I think in terms of interactivity, that sort of hands-on approach, we've got a great project as part of the Real Bread campaign, working with children and families, called Lessons in Loaf, which is something termed as seed to sandwich. So that allows people the whole process from sort of, you know, growing your own wheat right the way through to processing it to making bread in the end as well. And I think the stories are important there. It's about bringing things to life. And the other thing that's come out is about using people's skills. I think somebody said secret skills, because people obviously don't often acknowledge the fact that they do have skills, and it's how we can sort of, as a community, harness those. And this very much sort of can-do attitude, focusing on strengths, using local people, whether or not you call them expert champions, ambassadors, etc. And something that Hannah said as well about using spaces, but also those in-between spaces. So I'd just like to wrap up and say thank you ever so much for all our wonderful presenters. I'm sure we could carry on a lot longer. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I think everyone has shared details, and indeed we'll obviously make sure that they're also available on the Sustainable Food Cities Network web page, so that if you do need to or want to follow up on anything, then you can do. So thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed this afternoon's presentations.